Hey, welcome back into Content is for Closers, where each episode we talk to entrepreneurs, marketers, and business owners about how they can use content to grow their businesses. I'm your host, Adam Vasquez. I'm here alongside the greatest creative director in all the land, Carlton Riffle. Welcome to the show, Carlton.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. I must say, for that intro, you're getting pretty good at it. It's sounding very polished.
Thanks. If I just keep doing it for hours every day like we have been, it'll become second nature.
Your morning rituals, just repeating that 10 times to
exactly.
yourself.
Sarah hates it. Sarah and the kids are so sick of it, but they just have to get over it. How's your week going?
Oh, it's good. It's good. We've got this podcast that's making it more exciting every time we do it. How about you?
Cool.
You have any exciting things happen this week? Any exciting sports moments?
No, I haven't had any exciting sports moments this week, but I have experienced a exciting sports moment that I'm excited to talk about.
In the whole sports history of Adam Vasquez, what's your favorite sports moment?
So this isn't as a fan. This is like me as
No,
an
it can
actor.
be as a fan.
Those would be two different ones. If it was me as an athlete, it would either be in 10th grade, we went to state championship, and that was a really fun experience for the basketball team. But it would either be that or scoring 36 points on Tim Fortney in college. He was trying to defend
Just calling
me.
him out.
I do it all the time. So it would be one of those two. But as a fan, the top sports moment I ever had was very easy. It was in relation to, if you're watching the YouTube, this Super Bowl ticket right here. It was actually not even in a game, or definitely not part of the Super Bowl, but at the NFC Championship game in 2017, my wife Sarah and I drove to Philly overnight to get to the game, bought tickets. Everyone knows I'm a huge Eagles fan. We're hosting it against the Vikings. Everyone was picking the Vikings. Our quarterback was hurt. Everybody was sure we had no chance. And before the game even started, we got there super early, tailgating in the parking lot, that whole thing. And we go into the stadium as soon as it opens. Before it even started, some of the players were stretching and warming up in the end zone. And they started playing this song, Dreams and Nightmares by Meek Mill, which the team had sort of adopted as their anthem. And the whole team just started bouncing up and down in the end zone. And those of us that were in the crowd were just freaking out. And it was 2 hours before kickoff, but the environment, the energy was just electric. And I knew right then, I was like, we're going to the Super Bowl. And it was the most, I don't know, I still get goosebumps thinking about it. It was the most crazy experience. So that's my favorite sports moment.
So somebody probably just is listening to this podcast right now, and they're thinking, I thought I subscribed to a marketing podcast, not an
You
Eagles
asked.
fanboy.
It's
Eagles
true.
fanboy podcast. For me, growing up in Chicago, there are some incredible sports moments that I experienced. I got to say, I was waiting for the Cubs to win a World Series for a long time, like everyone else that enjoys Chicago sports. And so I think that's probably my highlight as a fan, was seeing them win that World Series. And
For sure. Legendary.
Yeah, I mean, that was just made growing up with the Cubs totally worth it, finally.
I feel like the thing that people don't think about when it comes to your sports fandom, or even growing up playing sports, is like the teaching that goes into it and all of the different components that a coach has to do in order to help you know the fundamentals and the strategy and then execute on the court. And that's what Tony Miller obviously does during his day job. But I thought what he did a great job in this interview was bringing some of that teaching, coaching mentality to how he does and executes his brand, A Quick Timeout, and sharing that with the audience.
There's so many great takeaways in this interview. He starts with some of the simple, easy steps you got to take when you get started with content creation. He wasn't like a professional content creator, and he just started. And then he goes from that to, finding his audience, engaging them, learning from them, and then ends with aligning that work that you do as a creator with some of the things that you're passionate about and your actual work in your day job. So really solid interview. I think specifically around audience building, there's a lot of good things at the beginning of the episode about finding your audience and knowing where they are. And then throughout the interview, he talks about just simple ways to use your content and get more leverage out of it. And then especially towards the end, he talks a lot about benefiting from an audience that you've already built and aligning what he does as his job with the content that he creates on the side.
He's a close friend of mine, but also was my coach at one point. And technically, we run the social company and he runs the coaching. Sometimes you've asked me, like, what would you do if you weren't doing this? I think I would be in sports. And I think Tony very easily could be doing what we do, running a marketing company and helping businesses along that way. So, really appreciate him coming on. But let's get to the interview with Tony Miller. Dr. Tony Miller is a professor as well as the assistant men's basketball coach at Bob Jones University and the host of the popular basketball coaching podcast, A Quick Timeout. Tony has been coaching and teaching for well over a decade now and has seen firsthand the power of content in building a brand, recruiting players, and connecting with other professionals in his industry. In addition to his coaching and podcasting duties, Dr. Miller teaches social media, sports marketing, and communications as the chair of the sports management department at Bob Jones University. During this episode, we discuss how Tony turned creating content into a business, the process for identifying the appropriate channels for your content, and the exact timing and effort required to get a campaign off the ground. I always appreciate Tony's practical insight and know this episode will serve any business owner or marketer who knows they need to be creating digitally but aren't sure where they should begin. Tony's a personal friend and someone I consider a mentor, and I'm grateful he decided to join us on the show. You can follow Tony's work and check out his show in the links in the show notes below. Without further ado, let's get to Tony Miller from A Quick Timeout. All right, we've got Tony Miller, Coach Tony Miller here on the show. Tony, I told them a little bit about you and what you do and who you are, but would love to hear from you specifically about A Quick Timeout. What is it? What's the value you all deliver? What's the product that you're creating? Revenue streams? What does the team look like? Just give us a quick synopsis of what you all are doing.
It started about 2-3 years ago. I started with a podcast. It was actually an outgrowth of my personal Twitter account. I started probably about 6 or 7 years ago, creating content on that platform for coaches, specifically basketball coaches, and a variety of like plays and video breakdowns. And outside of what it was specifically, it was really just kind of like an educational platform for me and an opportunity for me to kind of share with other people, connect with other coaches. Obviously, on a social media platform, you get the interaction. And so Twitter really allowed me to connect with other coaches that were from around where I was. And then I was on multiple continents connecting with coaches. Over time, kind of the idea of starting a podcast and really my relationship with you and talking with you about things, the opportunity for me to be able to start something. And that was when Anchor had just come out. So it was becoming more and more simpler for people to start a podcast. And I ended up starting that, like I said, about 2.5 years ago. I was fortunate because of the work that I had done on the Twitter account to where I had immediate listeners because of those connections. And so the podcast got rolling quicker than I expected. And over time, probably over the next really 6 to 8 months, grew and even changed formats in the way that I did the podcast. And so it was still educational, and that's kind of the foundation for everything else that I do. And so from that perspective, the podcast grew into then some other products. And like you said, it ended up becoming additional revenue streams. It wasn't intended to be like that at the beginning, but it's inevitable over time. I think people that produce content over time, that's just kind of where it goes. And that's kind of just where it went for me. The opportunity as well to connect with different sponsors. The basketball community itself is very tight knit, and the products that are offered to those people are very specific. And when you get, of course, the attention, there are going to be people who are interested in connecting with you, sponsors connecting with you. And so I ended up connecting with several different sponsors that created hardware for coaches, uniforms for coaches, software for coaches. And I actually just had one reach out just 2 days ago. So from that perspective, it was really exciting for me because it was another opportunity for me. It wasn't just revenue. That was nice, but it wasn't just revenue. It was in addition to that, me being able to leverage their platforms to be able to get my message out and connect with even more coaches. So it really has been like a true partnership from that perspective, me being able to connect with them being able to connect with my audience, the revenue that comes along with it, then just the natural scaling that results when you do a partnership right. So, I think you had mentioned in the email, my team consists of me, a one-man crew, which from a scaling perspective is not ideal, but it's what I enjoy and what I like. And so it's not necessarily difficult for me to create that content.
What you're talking about scalable is like you can't duplicate what you're doing 10x times or something like that, but it is scalable in the sense that you're one person who's just leveraging what you have in your brain, and now you're getting paid for that, right? So there's, I guess, the pros and the cons of it. But maybe taking a step back, I kind of led you astray there, but what is it that you're doing? What is a quick timeout? What is the value that you're offering to your audiences specifically?
The podcast itself is an interview-based podcast, and that's where I was saying when it started, it was really just me talking, and it was quick. It was about 6 to 7 minutes. The feedback that I got, again, the opportunity to interact on social media, I had focus groups like right at my fingertips. They were commenting back like, man, this is great. I wish it was longer. For me personally, having to listen to myself, I don't know how others felt about it, but moving over to the interview style kind of allowed me to connect with other coaches and learn from them. So I've said this even on the podcast, like jokingly, but I'm almost doing it selfishly at times because it allows me to connect with those coaches and learn from them. And so we talk about, very particular subject matters, whether that has to do with the type of defense or offense or whatever it is, but something very specific we talk about for 25, 30 minutes, and then it's over. Again, the whole concept is just to educate other people. It's not necessarily entertaining or stories. It really is kind of deep diving into topics. That kind of goes to the point of like knowing your target market and your target audience's needs. And that was very easy for me because I am a basketball coach. When I started it, I was a basketball coach who was several years into it. And so I knew the questions that other coaches were asking because I was asking those or I had asked those. So it was easy to come up with topics and come up with content. I wrote blog posts too with some of those partners that I was talking with you about and wrote for their website because I knew the questions. I knew what was keeping up coaches at night. I think that's a key point for those of us that make content. People are always wondering, what can I create? And everybody's got their 3 ideas, but past their 3 ideas, they're like, I don't know what to produce after this. And it really is just constantly thinking about, all right, what do they want to know about? What's stumping them? What problems are they having? And addressing all of those. And so, again, I've been very fortunate to have connections because of where I'm coaching to those other coaches. There have been some ways that I've connected with coaches. Sometimes it's just as simple as like reaching out through an email. Then that allows me, again, to get their information and help educate others through them. And it grows my knowledge about the topic too. So
Yeah.
You're kind of hacking the system when you do it that way, because a lot of people I feel like are so afraid to start because they don't know if either they'll have enough content or they'll have enough knowledge or enough whatever it is.
Just talking solo on a podcast to now interviewing other folks. You talked about the lessons that you're learning, but I'd imagine you had to have seen a good amount of network effect there too, right? Like when you started interviewing other coaches, the show, I would guess, grew substantially just based on those coaches bringing their audiences, or there's reporters sometimes you have on as well, bringing their audience. Did you see that, or was it something else that kind of helped grow the audience?
I think anybody that follows a podcast at least understands if they produce a podcast. But people like to hear themselves talk. They like to go onto podcasts, especially if you have any kind of following. And I think that was the fortunate part that I was talking about at the beginning. I don't want to skip over that because, again, I want people to be successful in this. And just starting a podcast, there's a reason why most podcasts only go 7 episodes. They haven't put in the work beforehand. And so I was fortunate, like I said, to be able to build up a following through, in this case, my Twitter and Instagram accounts, and was able to have something established to where when I went to those people and asked them, hey, would you come on my show? They went and visited my page, saw that I had people on there. I'll be honest with you, like I also targeted people that I knew were kind people and generous with their time, and people that others would recognize. And I've gotten comments back where they've said to me when I've reached out to a coach and they said, he doesn't usually do this, but he saw the other people that you've already had on your show and he's happy to come on. Well, when he comes on, I immediately get the name recognition of him.
Right.
I know your audience is kind of diversified here, but like I would guess that even people listening to this that don't really know much about sports, like know a guy's name like Dick Vitale. As soon as I got Dick Vitale on, then that opened the door to other people coming on. And so if you can land that 1 or 2, then that allows others to see that either you're legitimate. And it's not just that, but that does play a part of it. And like you said, you end up then leveraging their audience, which then kind of just amplifies it to other people. And
Sure.
so I've been fortunate to do it that way. Yeah.
Regardless if you have it or not, I think one of the things people struggle with is where should I distribute my content, or what channel should I use? And if you have an audience or you don't have an audience, there's somewhere where you can grow, whether it be your business or your community or your personal brand on the internet. So regardless of what you ended up choosing, what was the process you went through thinking through where you should end up publishing your content, which I think currently you obviously have the podcast, you do quite a bit of live streams, and then you have a newsletter, right?
Yeah, those are the three main sources. I didn't know it at the time, but what I was doing was content marketing. And content marketing is not a short term thing. It's something that the longer you do it, really, the more you're able to build up, and then you're able to, again, kind of cash in on it. They've done studies on this, but if you diversify too quickly, it doesn't work. And I accidentally happened upon that. So what ended up happening was I had the Twitter account that I was able to build up over time. And then over time, I was able to take that and then start the podcast. It all goes back to knowing your target audience and where they're at. For me, there are a ton of coaches on Twitter. Whatever your platform is, find out where those people are. In addition to that, know how they're consuming content on that platform. That's what's going to make you stick out from the other people, because the next thing people are always thinking is, well, somebody else is already doing that. How am I going to differentiate myself?
Right.
And so I think the key is know where they're at, know how to go to them, know how to reach them, know how to produce something that's different than maybe what somebody else is doing, or better, or put your own spin on it. And that's the other thing too. I'll post something on a Twitter account and I'll get a bunch of engagement with it. Somebody else posts the same thing, and the comments back to me, I don't know how you get so much engagement. Well, you just kind of know how to put your spin on it. And whatever your platform is, know how to put your spin on it that's unique and provide that valuable content. And the natural outgrowth will be is that people will pay attention to what you're doing, and that will allow you to kind of separate yourself. To your point, what you were just saying about the multiple platforms, those came much, much later. I really focused in on that podcast, and I focused in on it really for about 24 months before I really tried anything else. And that's one of those things, again, that has been tested. Most of the time, it takes most people between 6 to 9, sometimes 9 to 12 months. They make the mistake of diversifying too quickly.
Right.
And so I don't want people to hear that and to think, okay, well then I need to go start a podcast. I need to have a newsletter, and I need to do live streams. Those were like next steps for me. The live streams came about 6 to 9 months after the Twitter account happened. Yeah. And even that, what we were talking about, I didn't start a live stream by myself. I leveraged it with another coach. He had a huge following on Twitter and on the web already. And so even that was strategic. It benefited both of us. We were friends already. I just don't want people to be listening to this and thinking, well, if I just do this, then it's going to work out great.
Right. I mean, that's why I was asking. Your process essentially was less, I want to go start X show, X channel, whatever. It was more so, I know this activity's happening already. People are having these conversations on Twitter, and I want to get to this in a second, but you knew that basketball on the whole is consumed as podcasts and as live streams, things like that. So you started with one. How long did you say you did just the podcast for?
At least for 8 months. It was probably longer than that, though.
Okay. Yeah. And then after you'd put in 8 months, doing a couple episodes a week or whatever, began to diversify a little bit. I think that's really important. A lot of our customers will get through 6, 8, 9 months and not have seen the return that they want, or maybe they were expecting, how come it hasn't affected our Facebook yet, or it hasn't affected our YouTube channel yet, or whatever. And just depending on what the activation is. And it's just time in the market and allowing some of that compounding returns to get to you. The other thing we should note is, in addition to being a coach and a host and all that, you teach social media and content. So you're not speaking of just from personal experience, although you are, but that's where some of the statistics and the research that you're talking about come from, right?
Right. To that point, a lot of it was trying. You talked about the live stream. The live stream was actually a way for me to record additional podcasts. So I took the audios from those live streams. Well, I found out over time, people were consuming those live streams and they weren't going and listening to the podcast. So I tweaked the live stream so that they were producing something different, so that they weren't going to one and not going to the other. I still wanted them to be going primarily to the podcast. So,
sure.
The point is, try things. If it doesn't work, tweak it a little bit or whatever. But, we tried it. Now we're done with it because it didn't work. That's dabbling in content marketing, and that's not how it works.
Yeah. So I think for context for you, a lot of our audience, a lot of our community are people who are not dabbling, but are trying to understand content for the first time, right? Because they've built very successful businesses in a traditional way, and they're being confronted now with, especially after last year, a new way, or just being forced to communicate differently to their prospects and customers. With you, it's such a unique thing where your job is on the court, in the classroom, in people's homes, helping them decide where they're going to go to school, etc. It's a great example. And there would initially maybe be a disconnect for someone saying, why would that person who needs to be focused on the X and the O's leverage content for their brand? So how would you say this effort over the last couple of years, how has that impacted your ability on the court, your business, quote unquote, and just your regular job from 9 to 5? Because obviously this is something that you have to do in and on top of that.
It really has gone both ways. For me personally, just connecting with the additional coaches and me gaining the knowledge about the way that they do things, the way that they run their programs, the way that they draw up the X's and O's. So I've been able to learn from them. On the flip side of that, I've been able to teach others. And when I'm able to talk through things with other people, it allows me to help be a better communicator on the court with my team, to refine the way that I teach and the things that I say to my team or to others. Doing camps, training players one-on-one. Last spring, we held an in-person coaches clinic, and that allowed me to connect with other coaches. For me, being a college coach, I'm getting my content out. Happened just this last weekend, but our head coach and we go to tournaments to recruit players, and the players, oh yeah, we already know who you are. We follow you and your other coach there on social media already. They're willing to send their kids to my camp because it's not just another school. They already know Coach Miller. Like, they listen to his podcast. Of course, I'm going to send a kid. We've got a kid in our program this year who's coming in. I literally posted late spring, we need this kind of player. And within about 2 hours, I had a coach reach out to me and say, hey, I got a kid on my team. Long story short, he's a kid who's coming to our program this next year. And, from my perspective, I'm recruiting players. Somebody who's listening to this, like, you could be recruiting the next CEO that you have for your company, or the next whatever it is for your company, because you're producing content, providing people, and they're comfortable with you. They know who you are. I've been in people's ears and homes and gyms for the last 2 years. Like, they already know the kinds of things that I value and the things that are at my program. And so they're willing to push a kid to me versus somewhere else because they already know who I am and they already know what we're about. And I don't have to explain. I don't have to sell myself when I go into that kid's home or into that coach's gym. He already knows who I am. He already knows what our school's about. I could talk about this for hours. Like, if you really dove into it, the value has been immeasurable.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear. And I think a lot of people resonate with, we've experienced the same thing. We have two different trucking companies, believe it or not, that are Oakley Trucking and Norton Transport. And both have had that exact same experience where they're trying to recruit drivers. They'll bring in an entire class of owner operators to come to registration or the initial teaching session and ask, how did you hear about us? And it's through their podcast, through their YouTube channel, whatever, which in that industry is invaluable. You can't hire drivers right now. Same thing with you. You can't field a team without having players on. So I think that's really cool. A couple of last questions here, and some of this you've probably already addressed, but before we wrap up, what's next what do you see on the horizon for a quick timeout? Maybe it's just doubling down on more of the same. Any new things that you're considering, or just take us through the process of what you're looking at as you're thinking about continuing to grow this platform.
Especially in coaching, the software and the technology that's impacting our industry. Anybody that follows along with sports, like analytics and whatnot. Again, because of the things that I've done and the attention that we've gotten on the podcast, I've had companies reach out to me. And when that happens, they provide me with their services, and I have available to me things that really not many, if any, programs at my level that I'm coaching at have available to all of these resources. They can afford one or two of these, but they don't have the budgets to afford all of these. I'm getting a lot of these things for free because I've partnered with these companies through the podcast and whatnot. And so continuing kind of that kind of thing, it becomes very valuable to me. I think a lot of times we think of revenue like, all right, how am I going to make this additional sale? In my case, a lot of times is, how am I going to save money and still be able to have available to me the technology, the software, the hardware that my program or that my team needs. and we didn't really have to pay that much, if anything. So I think more of the same. Again, just trying to, for me personally, it's recruiting more players. We didn't talk about this, but I oversee a master's program, an online master's program. Well, those are all coaches that are coming to that. It's a master's in coaching. They already know now that's free advertising for my
Right.
program. Get
I
more.
didn't
Get
even
more
know you do that.
students.
You
Yeah.
oversee a
So,
master.
and I know this isn't possible for everybody, but like the connection for what I do, and I know a lot of people start a podcast just for fun on the side, and that's what they do after they come home from work. I'm very fortunate that my work, my side job with my coaching, and my hobby of my podcast and all we're doing with the Quick Time Out podcast, they all overlap. And so it's not that I go do this for this part of the day and go do this for this part of the day. It all helps the other. So, I would encourage people, if possible, if you can do that. I know it's not possible for everybody, but if it's possible, like, how can these things support the other? And what you end up finding is the comment people always have to me is, I don't know you how you have time for all of it. And when it's something that you love and it's something that it's just part of who you are, you're not really setting aside extra time for doing these other things. It's just part of your natural routine. So I'm very
Right.
fortunate from that perspective. I think just continuing to do the same, taking advantage again of maybe partnerships in the future, but a lot of the same probably for me.
Right. Well, I mean, the one thing I would say though to that is that, or you could correct me if I'm wrong, but you did start it and you did put in the extra work, even when it wasn't clear that it was going to connect to your other
Yeah.
jobs. Like, I mean, when you first started a Quick Time Out doing the short for coaches, etc., I think there's like a dotted line there, but it's not like it had a direct impact
Right.
on what you're teaching in the classroom or what you're teaching on the court, right? So you did invest some time there to make that
Yeah,
happen.
for sure. And I think that's, again, one of those things that if you're in it for the long run, you're going to figure out how things fit with each other. But you don't know that unless you stick with it. So,
Right.
yeah, to your point, starting out, sometimes there can be questions with things. Is where is this going? What's it going to be? But having now stuck with it for a while, I'm able to kind of merge those things together. And it's been invaluable, one for the other.
Cool. One more question, then you can ask me any question if you have one. We ask everyone on the show this: if you had a modest budget, not a crazy budget, but a modest budget of $150,000 worth of cash that you had to spend in order to grow your show or your brand or whatever, your product, how would you spend it?
Yeah, I hesitate to say this because people are going to get the wrong idea. I would probably use it primarily on advertisement, but that's usually where people start. That's, again, because I've done the content marketing and put in that work. Probably for most people, it would be the reverse of that. Stop spending your money on advertising and put in the work. Hire somebody. For me, I enjoy making the graphics. I enjoy making the video clips. I enjoy doing that. You and I have had conversations with this. Like, that's not something that you enjoy. And I would
No.
suggest for somebody out there, whatever it is that you don't enjoy or the side of it that you feel like you can't necessarily do well, go hire somebody to go do that. So if
Yeah.
that were the case, if you didn't have the software to be able to make that content, like, go purchase that. But again, I've been very fortunate because I have those resources available to me. I enjoy doing that.
It's not that I don't even enjoy it. My eyes don't
Right.
work that way. Like some people can't execute on that, but I'm going to push you a little bit on this. Like advertising is very broad. Like where specifically would you, and you don't have to contextualize. We get it. You have a specific niche show. Just kind of where do you think you would see the most impact on that budget?
Again, it's knowing who your target audience is. That's a funny thing about marketing. It's really not that hard. It just is like refining what you're doing. And if you know who your audience is, for me, in my case, I would advertise most likely on a couple other people's probably shows at their
Cool.
clinics is another big one. And I would probably up my email marketing as well. It's so funny that all of these new opportunities through different social platforms. And for me, I have found that email is still the best because I have coaches that are checking their email every day. The open rates are through the roof because, again, I know my audience and my audience opens emails. Knowing when to send them, knowing what to put in them, know how long to make them. Like, it goes to your point that you just mentioned there. You can hire somebody to figure out how to do all that for you, or you can put in the time and figure it out how to create the right kind of emails and the right kinds of things.
That's not just your audience. I was just looking at this recently for a customer. The average ROI this year on email for every dollar spent is $42 in return, which is bonkers. Like nothing else channel wise even comes close. And then it's something like 62% of email subscribers are willing to get more emails. Like they're comfortable with getting more emails, which again, compare that to interruptive ads or social media ads or anything like that. And people hate those, but they're opting into email. So it's a whole different experience. Don't sleep on email, I think is kind of the long and short of it. But
just real quick, I did. And honestly, It was you. You tweeted something during the pandemic about, now is the time for all right, fine. So I'm thinking I've got these followers. I got thousands of followers on Instagram. I got thousands of followers on Twitter. I don't need to grow my email list. But I doubled down on the email list, and it's individualized. It comes straight to their inbox.
Yeah.
And it's been the best thing for me. And to be honest, it's been the biggest return on my investment.
That's cool. All right. What's one question you have for me if you have one?
Who will win a World Series first, the Atlanta Braves or the Philadelphia Phillies?
Probably, almost certainly the Braves. I mean, the Braves, at least, they're just all injured and sick and whatever, but they at least have talented players. The Phillies have one good pitcher and an up and down lineup. So I would say the Braves. Also, shout out our podcast, 162 podcast, which is one of those that Tony mentioned earlier, didn't make it past its 12th episode birthday, but it's going to come back at some point. So that's a perfect example of jumping in, right away without maybe doing some of the background work. That was for a lot of different reasons, but it speaks to your point of really thinking through that audience, the value proposition. And then I think even most importantly, knowing that you have the time and the energy to commit an indefinite amount of time to see this thing be successful, and that's sort of the long and the short story, I feel like, of a quick timeout too. Like you knew from the jump, I'm not sure what this is, but I'm going to kind of figure out how it connects to the rest of the things I'm doing. I'm going to give enough time to breathe and grow and do that. So appreciate you coming on. Thanks for sharing all this with us. And where can people check you out online?
You can find me on Twitter at Tony W. Miller, or you can find me on Instagram at coach.miller.
All right.
And the website, ByHerdPods, quicktimeout.com.
Thank you so much, Tony, for that interview. That was awesome. So, Adam, some of the things that he talked about were super relevant to most of our audience. Just thinking about people that are in the weeds every day, creating content. What were some of your main takeaways for people listening?
I think just the practical actions that he took to lean into his job, his brand, and build a community around that. Like what Tony's done so well. First of all, if you don't follow Tony, go follow him on Twitter. We'll link it in the show notes. He's almost
even if you hate sports. Yeah, even if you hate sports, it's worth
it doesn't matter. He's almost at 10,000 followers, and so we need to get him there. But that alone, he's almost at 10,000 followers as an assistant coach on a D3 men's basketball team, which is great. But I mean, it's not like that's a super notoriety type position. It's just that he has built a community around other people who care about that niche thing. And a lot of times people get caught up in like, it's not my full-time job, it's not important enough or interesting enough, there's not a community around it. And Tony's just done the opposite and just done the work, taken the action. If you look at his Twitter, if you look at his website, it's all really well done. Anything he does is high quality, no matter if it's one person or 1,000 people. So yeah, I think that was the biggest takeaway for me, is just like leaning into what's in front of you.
Absolutely. I feel like for this episode, we should have had actual instant replays. Just
that would have been good.
Every time we wanted to reference the thing, we have a little screen come up.
Yeah.
We have whiteboards. This could go somewhere. So yeah, I think for me, it was his discussion around audience building. So, he started with really looking at his audience and saying, where are they at? Where are they existing right now? Where are they talking? He went there. We talked a little bit about this with Nicole about building community, but he injected himself in that community and started establishing his brand there. And then out of that started adding more content and adding more channels, but he didn't do it all at once. So, right. He started there, built it. And then as he went along, he kept adding and providing things of value for his audience. But I really liked how he talked about content going both ways. Content can serve as a great vehicle for instruction and learning things, but it also can be a reaction. you can create content around looking at things and reviewing them and analyzing what happened. So content is not just for giving someone instruction. It can also be entertainment. And in some ways, it can go a lot further than just what we imagine creating content for information and education.
Yeah, to that point, and this actually happened after we recorded the interview with Tony, but he has since started a TikTok, and it's a perfect example of both the things you're saying, because he's having to build a community from scratch over there, and it's different content than really any other platform that he was existing on. So check that out if you're interested in seeing it kind of happen in real time. Sometimes it's easy to be like, yeah, well, you can say that when you have 10,000 followers, but he's in the starting stages of that. I find it fascinating. We're going to talk more about TikTok on next week's episode as well. So be ready to skip that one.
Is Tony just dancing? Is that what he's doing to get?
You have to go check it out. I'm not gonna give it up. Tony's doing like the dance videos.
So what have you heard this week that's of interest, or what is your thing of the week?
Yes, so I'm going to lean into more stuff about Tony. Tony actually introduced or reintroduced me recently to the social media marketing podcast from Social Media Examiner. It's one of the oldest social media platforms and podcasts that exist. But if you haven't checked it out recently, there's a particularly good episode. I think I talked about it last week with Paul Howell, talking kind of about his version or his spin of the hero's journey. And it really breaks it down in super practical terms. So I'll make sure we link that. But that was a helpful thing for me this week.
For me, it's got to be my all-time favorite app on my phone, probably. I listen to a ton of podcasts. I've lost count at this point, but I listen on Overcast. Highly recommend it. You can create playlists. You can prioritize what's in the playlist. He's got a few unique features like boosting the speed by taking out spaces. So it's not just speeding up, but he's actually removing moments of silence in the interview. So he's got a lot of things that are really pretty cool about it. But another reason is just he's an independent developer doing it by himself. So by supporting it and downloading it, you're helping someone make a living. It's a great app, and I highly recommend it.
Very cool.
Should we be charging for these? Should we be like...
Yeah, we say no free shout outs, and then like these are all free shout outs. So yeah, I don't know what we're going to do about that.
But, maybe we should call it just shout out of the week. Free sponsor of the week.
Have you heard about these things that we're giving free ads to? I've used Overcast as well. I'm not quite as much of a power user as you are, if I'm being completely honest, but I do appreciate all the features of it. And I would also say it's one of the more socially enabled, or it's easier to share, I feel like, out of Overcast than a lot of the other ones. So
you can share specific links or time to a specific timestamp. So that's a neat feature as well.
Appreciate you all listening. If you haven't checked out our YouTube channel yet, be sure to head over there and check it out. Maybe you're watching this right now, then you need to go check out our podcast version. But yeah, share it with one other person. We are on our way to 100 reviews. And when we do, I don't know what we've been telling lies so far. So we need
something crazy.
Something crazy is going to happen. Get excited about it. And until then, we'll see you next week.